Tonight on Bridge City News, two nurses who took part in last weekend's NDP event at the Chinook Hospital are not happy. Local vets are speaking out against declawing your pet. BCN's Loris Alexander has the details. And an Alberta Ponzi scheme defrauded investors of more than $122 million. Good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. Two nurses who took part in last Saturday's announcement by the NDP and Premier Rachel Notley at the Chinook Regional Hospital say they felt used. The nurses were told that Premier Notley was in Lethbridge talking about how to save frontline healthcare jobs. Instead, it turned into a political message, with Premier Notley slamming UCP leader Jason Kenney over privatized healthcare. The nurses say they felt the event was misrepresented and they felt used for political gain. The Alberta Health Services has a policy that political rhetoric is not allowed at AHS facilities. The United Conservative Party has asked for the Ethics Commissioner to investigate the incident. UCP leader Jason Kenney says the NDP's immigration program has failed to attract top talent from around the world. Kenney says the province's program is tangled in delays and does not focus on the best candidates. He says if his party is elected this spring, it would begin consulting a new system and implement it in 2020. Kenney says it would include ways to reduce red tape and bring in more entrepreneurs who would be willing to work and live in rural communities. Whether it's a pet or a dog show, certain breeds of canines have traditionally had their ears and tails altered surgically at a very young age. As Loris Alexander explains, those procedures are now frowned upon by many veterinarians who say it's cruel and unnecessary.
Good girl. Good.
Before the summer, it could be illegal for veterinarians in Alberta to perform cosmetic procedures on cats and dogs, including ear cropping, tail docking, declawing, and devocalization.
I feel that it's high time, for sure. It has been debated for years whether declawing, ear cropping, those kind of things is necessary or not, and it looks like now there will finally be a unanimous vote.
Current laws in the province allow veterinarians to crop ears and dog tails, but according to this doctor, there's no scientific basis behind these procedures.
Declawing, is an unfortunate procedure. It's not necessary unless they have a medical reason for that, and so the new rules do still allow, an amputation of a toe, for example, if there's a cancerous lesion or if they've had a trauma or something to it. But to declaw them just because they can't, the owner doesn't want them to scratch things, is going to be no more.
Sunday, members of the Alberta Veterinary Medical Association passed a resolution for the ban. They also voted to make it a requirement for veterinary professionals to report concerns of animal abuse and neglect.
I think this is a really great step towards protecting pets. They can not protect themselves against what humans do to them sometimes. So I think this is a very reasonable step.
The ban won't come into effect immediately. However, the Council of the Alberta Veterinary Medical Association has the ability to make policy and are hoping to put the ban forward before the summer. For Bridge City News, I'm Loris Alexander.
For many business owners and nonprofit agencies here in Lethbridge, safety is a main concern, especially in the downtown core. Ainsley O'Reilly explains what the city is doing to make things a little bit better.
Back on November 5th, community members presented a report to City Council where 288 people testified to being impacted by the dangers of downtown. City Council, the BRZ, and law enforcement have heard them loud and clear.
It's all interconnected. As you're aware, we asked for two new initiatives in the budget ask, one being the community peace officers, the other being the Watch. The Watch is based on a program out of Winnipeg and a similar program in Vancouver. It's proven to work. We were fortunate to have the support of City Council. It's great to have a city manager that came from Winnipeg, and he, much like myself, saw the success of the program.
What's really exciting is this piece of it in terms of educating our community. We'll actually get firsthand knowledge of what it is that we're collectively trying to do to make our community more safe.
Through numerous community partners, the city, BRZ, and police officers will host seminars on the third Tuesday of every month at the CASA building. Today was the first event, but next month will focus on the drug crisis specifically.
Every seminar, the police are going to be there, and there's going to be a safety aspect probably to every seminar. So the next one being the drug crisis, there'll be a lot of information from us in regards to that as well. But then down the road, we're going to look at things like theft and fraud and different things that businesses can do, but also personal safety as well.
Overall, the downtown's business revitalization zone is optimistic.
We brought those concerns to the City Council and to the Police Commission, and we feel that they heard us and they've taken action, appropriate action, and they've put together a good strategy moving forward. And I think the business community is optimistic about 2019 and beyond with all of the things that the City of Lethbridge has put together to address the drug issue in our community.
For Bridge City News, I'm Ainsley O'Reilly.
3 people in Medicine Hat have been arrested following a drug bust. Alert's Medicine Hat organized crime team, along with the Medicine Hat Police Service and Brooks RCMP, seized more than $32,000 worth of meth during 2 separate traffic stops. Police also confiscated a loaded handgun, brass knuckles, and cash. 37-year-old Aaron Horvath, 26-year-old James Bernard, and 19-year-old Devin Coley face a wide variety of charges, including drug possession. Please say if you suspect any drug-related activity in your neighborhood, call Crime Stoppers right away at 1-800-222-8477. David Stephan returned to the Court of Queen's Bench in Lethbridge yesterday to represent himself and his wife Colette in the lead-up to their retrial. The Stephans are facing charges of failing to provide the necessaries of life in the death of their son Ezekiel. David Stephan asked Judge John Rook to adjourn the case so he could properly prepare. Justice Rook said no, reminding Stephan that he had plenty of time to prepare since the case management hearing was set on June 11th of last year. Rook also said the Stephans had refused to submit an application to have a court-appointed lawyer to their case last fall. David and Colette parted ways with their previous lawyer last October. The new trial, which will run for 4 weeks, is set to begin on June the 3rd. The City of Calgary will be doing a study looking at the effects of removing fluoride from their drinking water 8 years ago. Council voted yesterday to have the UFC look at the detriments and benefits of fluoridation. The study should take place over a 4-month period. A University of Calgary study in 2016 compared children's teeth in Calgary with those in Edmonton who have fluoridation. It found that kids in Calgary had a lot more cavities. A local dentist here says fluoride is safe for everyone.
The position of the Alberta Dental Association and College follows that of the Canadian Dental Association and the World Health Organization that feels that there's ample evidence that fluoride in water is completely safe when it's monitored and administered properly. So it's not a free-for-all. It has to be done properly, but there's lots of evidence to show that it helps people.
A Lethbridge City spokesperson says we still have fluoride in our drinking water. The operators of an Alberta Ponzi scheme that cost investors $122 million have been hit with more than $4 million in penalties. The Alberta Securities Commission says Arnold Breitkreitz of Calgary must pay the bulk of the costs, including $2.67 million. Office Administrator Susan Way is ordered to repay $562,000. The ASC says the two took money from hundreds of investors between 2004 and 2015 that was to be invested into mortgages. It says the money instead was used to make interest and principal payments to other investors in that Ponzi scheme. There were 3 by-elections held in our country last night, and each of the big 3 parties celebrated with victories. The Conservatives hung on to a seat in Ontario riding of York Simcoe. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, meanwhile, finally won a seat in Parliament by beating out his competition in Burnaby South.
You know, when I was growing up as a kid, I could have never imagined someone like me ever running to be Prime Minister. Well, guess what? We just told a lot of kids out there that yes, you can. Yes, you can.
What are you going to do now to reverse the sagging polling numbers for the NDP nationally?
Well, what we're going to do is get to work. We're going to fight for people and show them that they don't have to put up with a government in Ottawa that's too busy handing out gifts to SNC-Lavalin, to the pharmaceutical industry, continuing to subsidize oil and gas. Instead, they can choose to have the New Democrats who will fight for them be on their side, be in their corner.
The Liberals also won a seat last night, held by former NDP leader Tom Mulcair in Quebec. The by-election in Outremont, Quebec, was sparked by Mulcair's departure from a seat he had held since 2007. A 2-week-old scandal dogging the federal cabinet could be laid to rest or inflamed by the testimony of former Justice Minister Jody Wilson-Raybould. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has waived solicitor-client privilege and cabinet confidentiality. Wilson-Raybould is expected to speak to a parliamentary committee as early as tomorrow afternoon. It is alleged that she was pressured by the PM's office to negotiate a remediation agreement with SNC-Lavalin rather than pursue a criminal prosecution for bribery and fraud. Saskatchewan's chief coroner says his office will be much slower releasing names of any deceased following a mix-up in the Humboldt Broncos bus crash. Clive Wayhill says the coroner's office was relying on information provided by hospitals when it mixed up the names of a player who died and the survivor of the crash. A report released today calls for mandatory seatbelts on highway buses and tougher enforcement of trucking rules. A woman and her teenage daughter are facing homicide charges in the deaths of 5 relatives, including 3 children who were found inside of an apartment in Philadelphia.
I have to report that we have 2 suspects in custody for the homicide of 5 people at this apartment complex behind me. Shayna Decree, 45 years old, and her daughter Dominique Decree, 19 years old, were both treated earlier and are now in custody. 5 counts of homicide each and 1 count of criminal conspiracy. They're both residents of apartment S7, where we found 5 of their relatives today about 4 p.m. All 5 of them are deceased, and they are as follows: Shayna Decree's children, Naira, age 25, Damon Decree Jr., age 13, Shayna Decree's sister, Jamila Campbell, age 42, and Campbell's twin daughters, Erica and Imani Allen, both age 9. We wanted to come out here at this point and make sure that everybody knew that the people that committed these atrocious acts are now in custody.
A jury at a federal court in San Francisco will decide whether the weed killer Roundup caused a California man's cancer. The trial, which begins next Monday, could set a precedent for hundreds of similar lawsuits against Monsanto.
Well, for about 40 years, Monsanto has known that its product Roundup can cause cancer. Mr. Hardiman used it for 25 years and he contracted a type of cancer called non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. This lawsuit seeks damages for his cancer. When I took Monsanto's deposition, I took their corporate representative deposition, he said to me that there's no evidence across the board that there's any association with cancer. That's just nonsense. There is a mountain of evidence, and this company needs to get straight and to be honest with its customers and say, listen, there is evidence that it's associated with cancer, and let people make a choice about whether or not they use the product. This case is about failure to warn, and the simple fact is they haven't warned, and they're going to keep being sued until they do.
Scientists are trying to find unique ways of treating infections when traditional antibiotics fail. As we hear in this next report, doctors are developing unusual approaches such as pitting germs against each other.
Ella Balasa has a serious lung infection, and antibiotics have quit working.
It's just really gotten worse, and now I'm needing oxygen all the time. I've been on IV antibiotics for now 4 weeks, and I just feel as sick as when it started.
The 26-year-old has cystic fibrosis, which causes thick mucus in her airways that has trapped dangerous bacteria. Desperate for relief, Balasa recently started a dramatic experiment, using one germ to fight another germ, in this case, inhaling a virus to attack her superbug. With antibiotic-resistant infections becoming a global emergency, scientists are racing to find alternatives.
All indicators seem to point to the fact that this is going to get worse and worse. There are some subpopulations of people, some demographic groups, for which this is a particularly serious issue.
Phage therapy is one of the alternatives being looked at closely. It's been around for a century, but got pushed aside when the easier-to-use antibiotics came along.
The discovery of a super penicillin.
It uses viruses called bacteriophages to infect and break down specific bacteria. Biologist Benjamin Chan of Yale University has been traveling the world collecting phages from places like ditches, ponds, and even sewage treatment plants.
The best places are often really dirty places because we're dirty animals, and so like the sewage is is great.
Because each phage only recognizes certain bacteria, it shouldn't kill off the good bugs in the digestive tract like antibiotics do.
We're not like burning the whole population, we're just finding the bad ones ideally and killing those.
There is still little known about the efficacy of phages, and formal studies are just being planned to try to prove their value.
There's an incredible opportunity here, but with that you have to have the appropriate amount of skepticism and rigorous science.
Balassa recently became Yale's 8th phage therapy patient. She's now completed 2 rounds of treatment, inhaling billions of phages over several days.
I really hope that it can help get my infection under control to a point where I won't need even any sort of antibiotics for maybe a couple of months stretch. That would be amazing.
Early tests suggest phages killed much of Balassa's predominant infection and made the survivor susceptible to antibiotics again. Balassa says the true test will be how long she can go without using any antibiotics. Krista Fourier, Associated Press.
It was on this date that the World Trade Center was bombed. France's Napoleon Bonaparte escaped exile on Elba, and singer Johnny Cash was born. This is Today in History for February the 26th.
February 26, 1993. In New York, a bomb built by Islamic extremists explodes in the parking garage of the World Trade Center. The blast kills 6 people and injures more than 1,000 others. More than 8 years later, the Twin Towers fall in the September 11th terrorist attacks. 1987. The Tower Commission rebukes then-President Ronald Reagan in its report on the Iran-Contra affair. It concludes Reagan failed to control his national security staff in the Arms for Hostages scandal. 1815. Napoleon Bonaparte escapes from exile on the Isle of Elba to begin his second conquest of France. His return to power lasts just months until he's forced to step down after losing the Battle of Waterloo. 1928.
I found my thrill on Blueberry Hill.
Fats Domino, the R&B singer who became one of rock and roll's earliest stars, is born in New Orleans. And 1932.
I fell into a burning ring of fire. I went down, 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 and the flames went higher.
Singer-songwriter Johnny Cash, country music's Man in Black, is born in Kingsland, Arkansas. Today in History, February 26th. Ross Simpson, The Associated Press.
I missed the Man in Black, and that ring of fire would have warmed us up on a day like today. It was pretty cold here in southwestern Alberta, but fortunately, the mercury will be climbing. I'll have complete weather details coming up shortly. A mainly clear but cool day in our city. Tonight, just a few clouds developing with a low near -24. Tomorrow, mainly sunny with the temperature warming up to -8. Clouds and a chance of flurries on Thursday with a high near -6. A cold front moves in on Friday with the mercury dropping to -20. Saturday, mainly sunny with a high near -17. Sunday, blue skies, sunshine, and a high of -14. Monday, mainly sunny again with a high expected near -13 degrees. Checking the almanac, the average high for this time of year is +3 and an average low of -9. The highest temperature on this date was recorded in 1992 at 20 degrees, and the record low was -34 in 1947. Sunrise was at 7:21, sunset at 6:07. Let's have a look at how tomorrow's shaping up across the country now. Increasing clouds and 3 degrees is on tap for Vancouver. Victoria will be mainly cloudy and 4. It'll be much warmer in Calgary tomorrow, sunshine and a high near -4 degrees. A chance of flurries, a -5 for Edmonton. Sunny and -10 for Regina. A chance of flurries, a -9 for Saskatoon. Increasing clouds, a -13 degrees is on tap for Winnipeg. In the central part of the country, Toronto will have snow and -6. Snowing and -11 for Ottawa. Pretty much the same picture in Montreal. In the Maritimes, Fredericton, New Brunswick will have a mixture of sun and cloud and should see a high of -10. Halifax, Nova Scotia will have light flurries of -10 as well. Charlottetown, PEI will be mainly sunny and -11. And St. John's, Newfoundland will be cloudy, snowy, and -2 degrees for tomorrow. The Alberta Energy Regulator has conditionally approved a tailings management plan for an oil sands mine. Suncor Energy's Fort Hills mine is proposing to chemically treat its tailings, concentrate them all in a single deposit by the year 2073, then cover the residue with water to create a large pit lake. The regulator says it needs a plan for a project to demonstrate how its aquatic storage system will work by September 30th of 2021. It says it must present a research plan for its water capping technology by September of 2023. Air Canada is ending its direct flights from Winnipeg to Saskatoon and Thunder Bay. It will also fly only once daily from Winnipeg to Regina. A spokesperson with the airline said the routes were not making enough money. Air Canada said demand between the cities, aircraft availability, and profitability all factored into the decision. The Bank of Canada says its first quarter profit was up 54% from a year ago when it took a $425 million hit related to U.S. tax changes. Canada's fourth largest lender says it had a profit of $1.5 billion. Net earnings on an adjusted basis amounted to $1.54 billion or $2.32 per diluted share. BMO says it saw strong results from its U.S. personal and commercial banking division. It saw flat earnings from its domestic retail banking arm and a drop in profit from its wealth management and capital markets divisions. Chiropractic care is used to help many people recover from serious car accidents. Not only do chiropractors manipulate you with their hands, but many also use shockwave therapy, including Dr. Jeff Hedrick, a Lethbridge chiropractor.
Shockwave therapy was actually developed to break down kidney stones while they're still inside the body. So this high pressure acoustic wave can penetrate deep into the tissue. And what it does is it recreates the initial stages of the injury. And those initial stages are what signal the body to start the healing and repair cycle. So they have different chemical signalers in them. They also help to stimulate new blood vessel development, change the metabolic activity of cells, and generally work with the body's own processes to enhance and promote healing in the area.
Catch my full interview with Dr. Hedrick discussing the benefits of chiropractic care coming up after business news. Now, here's a look at today's markets. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, a 2-week-old scandal dogging the federal cabinet could be laid to rest or inflamed by the testimony of former Justice Minister Jody Wilson-Raybould. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has waived solicitor-client privilege and cabinet confidentiality. Wilson-Raybould is expected to speak to a parliamentary committee as early as tomorrow afternoon. Another meeting is being set up between U.S. President Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un as North Korea works toward denuclearization. Our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari has details next. But first, here's a look what's happening in and around your community.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. Come out to an all-new Watoto Children's Choir Tour on Wednesday, February 27th at 6:30 p.m. at Emmanuel Lutheran Church in Lethbridge. This free concert is a vibrant worship experience, highlighting Watoto projects which have saved hundreds of orphan children. Allow their stories and live worship to touch your heart. For more information about Watoto, visit watoto.com. World Day of Prayer 2019 is taking place Friday, March 1st. If you'd like to be a part of this global prayer initiative, come to the Salvation Army Community Church in Lethbridge at 2 p.m. Refreshments to follow. Plus, the Church of the Ascension Anglican Church in Coaldale will also be having a special service at 7 p.m. For more information, visit worlddayofprayer.net. Big Brothers, Big Sisters in Lethbridge is searching for volunteers to mentor children and youth in their various programs. Volunteers commit anywhere from 1 hour a week to 1 full year. They have many kids on their wait list that are looking for a big brother or sister. Make a difference in a child's life and start something big. For more information, call 403-328-9355 or email info.leth@bigbrothersbigsisters.ca. And that's your Bridge City News Community Calendar.
A big summit is coming up between the United States and North Korea and Vietnam later this month. To talk more about the meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari joining me from Los Angeles. Lisa, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said the U.S. will aim to get as far down the road as they can.
Yes, so we're getting some very interesting feelings surrounding this second round of meetings. Obviously, both sides hoping the other will go first, if you will. So after the first round of meetings, it was understood that the tensions were broken. First and foremost, that was the big accomplishment, but no specifics were really given. I mean, how would North Korea denuclearize? How would the U.S. then remove the sanctions? And since then, there's been a lot of chest thumping, a lot of speculation, a lot of different reports to suggest that North Korea hasn't been keeping their part of the deal, and we have no timeline or deadline to hold them to. So now Mike Pompeo, in the last 24 hours, not only said what you just said, Hal, that we're going to push as far as we can, but also said we're thinking we're going to have another session after this. So basically, they're leaving themselves room, but hoping for the best, hoping to get the most and most significant outcome out of this second round of talks.
The dance continues. Here we go. The turmoil also continues in Venezuela, Lisa. The U.S. hit the Latin American nation with new sanctions recently and called on allies to freeze assets after deadly violence blocked aid from reaching the crisis-hit country over the weekend.
Yes, if you can imagine the humanitarian crisis that goes on there and the millions of dollars of humanitarian aid that is attempting to reach the people, and imagine a regime that will not allow that aid to reach the people. That's exactly the crisis that we're facing in Venezuela. An oil-rich country in which nobody should have to suffer, no one should have to dumpster dive, no one should have to sell an organ or a child or their hair in order to put food on the table, but that's the reality that they face. And these are only the individuals who stayed behind. Think about the millions of refugees who hit the road because they could no longer tolerate the realities of life in Venezuela. And now you have the Maduro regime that will not fold to international pressure, to internal pressure, but is being propped up by his military and by foreign actors such as China, North Korea, Turkey, Iran, and Russia. And this continues, this push and pull goes on, but as you said, the humanitarian aid is the big factor here because of the people that continue to suffer. So the United States today put on additional sanctions just for the fact that the Maduro regime is not allowing this humanitarian aid to reach the people. They actually barricaded the streets. They, in some instances, set fire to the humanitarian aid that was directed and meant for the people of Venezuela.
And doesn't Venezuela even produce more oil than Saudi Arabia?
Yes, this is an astounding fact that people don't realize. In the Middle East, we have this saying, it's in Farsi, it says, it's like Kuwait, meaning you don't have to work. You talk about a place where everyone's retired and no one has to work and everyone's sitting at the beach. It's like Kuwait. That's just an expression. Because you talk about the oil-rich lands of Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, the UAE, Bahrain, places where there's so much oil that the people don't have to worry a day in their lives. And that should be the reality of the people of Venezuela. But because of communism, take a note, regimes around the world and many on the far right in this country, and I know in Canada as well and across Europe, take note that it doesn't work. It doesn't benefit the people. It doesn't make the economy grow. It only makes it shrink. It makes people suffer. And the best you could hope for is status quo. And in this case, people hoping just to get, again, food on the table, just to get to that status quo is a dream. And now look at the reality of these people suffering under these egregious humanitarian conditions. And finally, when that help arrives, not being able to get it because your regime, your so-called elected leader, not allowing you to get the help that you need.
The opposition Labour Party in Britain is calling for a second referendum on Brexit. But Lisa, British Prime Minister Theresa May wants none of it, especially since they're so close to leaving the European Union next month.
Right. So around the clock, you have different factions coming up with a plan B or the day after plan. And Theresa May doesn't want to hear about it. She almost doesn't want this to be jinxed. She doesn't want any negative talk. She thinks they are so close. She's on the 1 yard line and hoping that she will push this through and push it through in a way that will redeem herself, really. This has been a very, very, very challenging position for her to be in, both with regards to Brexit and with regards to her personal political career on the line. And again, you have leaders putting pressure on her and the future of the UK, people getting cold feet and wanting to know what will happen if there is a no-deal Brexit, what will happen if there is a no-deal, no Brexit, and looking at all the different combinations of how this can go down and how to salvage the situation in the aftermath. But as you said, Theresa May, she's not going for it.
Lisa, police say a Bangladeshi passenger on a Dubai-bound flight who threatened to blow up the plane was carrying a toy gun and no explosives. Tell me what happened there.
Yeah, you know, I woke up to this news yesterday and I thought to myself, does this really still happen? Does one individual still think, you know, sickly that they can take down an entire flight when you have, you know, security forces on board, you have trained pilots? You know, this is a very amateur move by an individual with a toy gun. Nothing to it more than empty threats and a sick mind and a sick desire to scare people, intimidate people. That is the sheer definition of terrorism now, isn't it? And he was successful in doing so. And again, we live in a time where we can, you know, have this story today and have this conversation, Hal, about it being a toy gun. But can we take the chance next time around to say, well, it could be a toy gun. Should we see what he has? No, it'll be taken as seriously because we just can't. We live in a time where these things do happen and people do have these desires sickly. So we have to take them seriously. And I guess fortunately in this case, he did not have explosives or any dangerous weaponry.
Yeah, the plane made an emergency landing and commandos stormed the plane, shooting the would-be hijacker, and he later died from his injuries. Lisa, Pope Francis ended his conference on the sexual abuse of kids by clergy by calling for an all-out battle against the abuse. But victims and their advocates say they're really disappointed and more needs to be done to protect our children.
Yes, this is an ongoing epidemic. And, you know, I've actually interviewed a lot of people on this story over the years. And there are many people who believe that the Catholic Church could benefit from some reforms, and some reforms that would mitigate the instances where these things happen, where members of the church who are not permitted to marry, to engage in intimacy, would have that opportunity, and therefore, you know, be able to answer to a very human need, and therefore we would you know, be able to have less instances of these cases. These children suffer. They're at the mercy of the church. They're told that this is, you know, a place where they could feel safe, where they could feel protected, and they don't. And these cases, unfortunately, don't come up, you know, a year or two after they happen. They come up decades after they happen, meaning these individuals are being haunted by the reality of what happens to them for years and years and years. And if the goal is to bring people closer to the church, then we're missing the point. If there's a conversation, and a very serious conversation to be had, you know, I think this is the time to do so. And we do have a pope. Many criticize him for being so progressive, but since we do have a pope who is progressive, perhaps this is a good time and a good era to have this conversation about what can be done to, again, you know, decrease these instances.
A place I really enjoyed traveling to last year was Veradero, Cuba. I mean, we talked about that on the show in the past. The beaches, the scenery was spectacular. The food wasn't too bad, friendly people. But Lisa, I also noticed a lot of poverty. Cubans recently ratified a new constitution that enshrines the one-party socialist system while instituting modest economic and social changes. Now, what does that mean for Cubans and for tourists like you and I?
Right. You remember how last year when you went over to Cuba, I think we even said you're one of the lucky ones, because I think you're among the last to be able to easily get over there. I remember, one of my interns actually traveled around the same time you did, and I said the same thing to him. I said, you got in there at the right time because you were able to visit. There's obviously a lot of political isolation right now between Cuba and the United States, Cuba being in this trifecta of nations like Nicaragua, Venezuela, in the Western Hemisphere that is still socialist and continues to go that way. They had a referendum. As you said, they voted this one-party socialist system again with modest economic reform. I guess my reaction is they don't know any better. This is the life that they know. And I haven't traveled to Cuba, but from what I see, that society is frozen in time. So in order to take it to the next chapter, a lot has to be done. And I don't know if the people are ready or if they even have the know-how, the abilities that, it's that same nation building skill set that we talk about when we talk about nations of the Middle East, for example. This is a similar situation because you have this nation that's stuck in, half a century ago or more. And when you have that reality, they're going to keep choosing that over and over again for fear of something worse happening or destabilization. You can compare this to Brexit. Look at the cold feet that people get with that change and time. So I think when you're allowed to make an enemy out of the United States, out of those who are pushing for you to change, I think people rally around the flag. And this is an instance of that where people voted actually again for socialism. But there is no momentum for change. There is no leader for change. There is no face for change. And until they get to a point where poverty, as you said, there's a lot of poverty, but until they get to the point where it's so poor like Venezuela, when that reality means people coming out onto the streets, that's when you see an impetus for change. People don't go to sleep dreaming of democracy, in an abstract way. They go to sleep dreaming of food and of jobs and of a way out of poverty. And that is how democratic movements are born. So until Cuba gets to that reality, it's what you see is what you get, and this is what they know. And again, I'll say it, Hal, you're so lucky to get in there. I would love to visit. And I looked at my interns' photos. They're beautiful. They're colorful. Those cars that they're able to keep, the 1950s cars, really looks every shot looks like a postcard. So
what's really interesting
place.
though about those 1950s Chevys, 57 Chevy, or the 55 Nomads, is that under the hood for all of those vehicles was the Toyota diesel motor. They took out the 350 Chevys. And it's better gas mileage that way, right? So that was interesting. Right. Lisa, the architect behind the 2015 Iran nuclear deal, abruptly resigned on Monday. Why did Iran's Foreign Minister Mohammad Zarif step down?
This is a huge mystery. So he issued his resignation on Instagram with a very, very mysterious post. He apologized for any shortcomings and thanked the people for their time and wished them luck in the future and signed off. And this was all on Instagram. Again, Instagram being a platform that's often banned in Iran for the people of Iran. In the meantime, you had Bashar al-Assad, Syria's leader, meeting with Khamenei, the supreme leader, and we're told that Zarif, the foreign minister, was kept out of those meetings, was not privy to any of those meetings that have been planned for over a week. So what's going on? It's hard to tell. The hardliners push Zarif, who is more of a modern face, and I hate to say that because no one in that regime is modern, but he has more of a face of dealing with the West. He speaks perfect English. He's been educated in the West, etc. Did they push him out? Perhaps. Did he think that there is a collapse of the regime that's imminent and want to get out? I mean, we can be hopeful and think that, but there is no indication of why. There are also some reports that say that the regime denied his resignation, but I saw it on Instagram. I posted it. That's his official account. He did put up a resignation, and I think in the days to come, we'll see more of why this took place, what are the other circumstances surrounding this, and if there is more to this story.
Russian state television has listed U.S. military facilities that Moscow would target in the event of a nuclear strike. Apparently, a hypersonic missile Russia's developing would be able to hit its target in less than 5 minutes. How is that even possible?
How is that even possible, and why are they doing this? Those are the two major questions here. So yes, the Russian regime, when they start to play, I'm going to get you, for lack of words that are not appropriate for television. Then you have, a real challenge on your hands. They are not playing in a sissy league. They mean business, and every day it's a new threat, asking if the U.S., if they want to go to war, if there's going to be some sort of exchange of missiles, we're up for the fight. And Putin, of course, knows exactly what he's doing. He's masterful at this propaganda game. And in this instance, they mention places like the Pentagon, like Camp David in Maryland, as places that could easily be targeted by the Russian regime. Again, more saber rattling. And where will this go? I don't know. Whether it'll lead to some sort of summit, something where some sort of deal or nuclear pact can be signed, but that doesn't really sound like something that Russia would be interested in anyway, even though they're hinting at it. Does Russia really want to be bound? Do they want the U.S. calling the shots? Do they want to have the U.S. tell them where to sign on the dotted line? Doesn't sound like it, but they're using this excuse of that we don't have a pact between us to do more of this chest thumping, as you can see.
Our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, joining me once again from Los Angeles. Thanks so much, Lisa.
My pleasure.
It's been said many times over and over again, if you don't have your health, you really don't have anything. The good news is that research and technology is always being developed to improve your health. Today we're going to talk about chiropractic health and treatments and a unique treatment used by some Olympians to treat pain and injuries. Joining me now at the desk is Dr. Jeff Hedrick. He's a Lethbridge chiropractor specializing in shockwave therapy. Welcome to PCN, Dr. Jeff.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Hal. I really appreciate the invitation.
You bet.
And I love talking about chiropractic, so I'm looking forward to this.
So what are chiropractors really able to help a lot of people with?
Well, the question you're asking is a pretty large question. Chiropractic is a large profession, and it has a big scope of practice. So many of the issues that people face when they come to see a chiropractor are pain-related, and some of them are not so much pain-related, but perhaps nutrition-related. So there are multiple types of barriers that we try to address to improve the healing.
I know when I had my car accident many years ago, about 6-7 years ago, chiropractic treatment helped me a lot. Keep the spine properly aligned. That's pretty important, isn't it?
Absolutely. We're walking around in an upright in a gravitational field, and just the sheer wear and tear of gravity and time on our bodies takes its toll.
How important is chiropractic treatment when it comes to helping somebody with migraines? Constant headaches?
Migraines are a very debilitating disease, and I guess you could call it a disease because there's many factors that underlie these conditions. I read at one time that there are about 80 causes for headaches. Wow. And so it's pretty hard to pinpoint any one issue, but chiropractic does have good success with certain types of migraines.
So what would a patient expect to take place in their very first visit with a chiropractor? You do an assessment at that point in time?
Exactly. We like to do a thorough case history. So we're going to look at the familial history or the history of the present illness. We're going to look at the type of onset that they've had with the condition. And we're probably going to get into some examinations, a little bit of testing. We call it provocative testing to see if we can reproduce some of the symptoms.
Some people I speak to, they say, I'm not going to go see a chiropractor. They're going to snap my neck, crack my neck, and they get a little nervous about it, right? I'm going to be paralyzed, I can't leave the office. So how do you put people's fears at ease, Dr. Jeff?
Well, that is a great question. I'm not sure that I have the best answer for it at all, but basically I talk to people about their problem, and I'm concerned. I've had my own issues, and I like to identify with them and let them know that I understand their fears, their misconceptions, maybe some of their misgivings and things like that. And then we just talk about the options that we have for treating it. And of course, I always explain the process that I'm going to do and make sure that they're comfortable with it before we proceed. And in most cases, people realize that they can't go on the way that they're feeling now, and that they have to go through a little bit of a treatment to get the issues resolved.
When we're driving a car, we can always tell if our vehicle needs a realignment. A lot of times the tires are going bald on the inside, the outside. You need a realignment. How can we tell with our body when we need a realignment?
Another great question. Some people wait till the point that they have pain. Pain, there's no such thing as a good pain, we'll say that for sure. It's definitely a warning, but it's not the actual problem. So you really have to get into measurement to find out if there is something going on in the person's body.
So how can you really help when it comes to the manipulation, when it comes to a person's back, like their lower back, the central part of the back, and the upper back?
Depending on what type of a procedure that the chiropractor is using, we can treat just about any area, maybe not necessarily from that area, because we look for other restrictions to the function and perhaps some other tissues that are involved that have a referred pain or projection of pain. So we do get in there and we can treat manually with the manipulations or soft tissue treatments. There's a lot of types of chiropractic out there, and they can address a big variety of issues.
Can chiropractic treatment also help with irritable bowel syndrome?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think that the answer is probably. There are quite a few issues that are related to that in the spine, and not every one of them, I'm sure. And that's the nice part about chiropractic, though, is that anything that's related to the spine is definitely going to get better, and anything that's not related is still going to be persistent afterward. And it helps the people sort out some of the causes that they may have for those issues.
So explain to our viewers then, Dr. Jeff, how you incorporate shockwave therapy into your treatments.
Well, shockwave therapy has been a transformative procedure in my clinic. I didn't know that there was so much that I wasn't really good at until I got that into my office and started working with multiple conditions. So now I'm looking at a lot of people. Well, I used to have people come to my office and they'd come in for a specific problem, but I'd notice that they'd also have knee or hip pain or an elbow issue, and I didn't really have a great treatment to offer them. And then once I got the shockwave therapy in there and started using that, I found that I could treat a lot more conditions. So I'm always on the lookout for what type of a problem a person has, and of course, trying to get the word out and let people know about what shockwave can do has brought in a whole new bunch of people to the office. So
and Olympic athletes have used this as well with some of their injuries? Yeah,
there's a lot of athletic application for this type of a procedure, and pro sports, they're using this extensively. Now they travel with physiotherapists or chiropractors and sometimes even their own personal physicians, and they use all types of modalities out there, but shockwave is becoming very, very prominent out there.
So how does it actually work then, doctor?
Excellent question. Shockwave therapy was actually developed to break down kidney stones while they're still inside the body.
Wow.
So this high pressure acoustic wave can penetrate deep into the tissue. And what it does is it recreates the initial stages of the injury. And those initial stages are what signal the body to start the healing and repair cycle. So they have different chemical signalers in them. They also help to stimulate new blood vessel development, change the metabolic activity of cells, and generally work with the body's own processes to enhance and promote healing in the area.
So what actually changes in the body as a result of the acoustic waves that are being administered to us?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Well, basically it's just kick-starting the body's healing cycles. The body has certain reactions to different type of forces that are introduced to it. We know that a pressure wave coming into the body will stimulate new blood vessel development. We also know that the bones in the body respond to the stresses of standing, running, and jumping, and that high pressure wave can be brought in there to improve the turnover of the bone cells, which makes it stronger. Also, there's a big influence in the lymphatic system. The shock wave is able to gently press out that lymphatic fluid, and that is a big promoter of healing, something that's not as well known as it should be.
How long does a shockwave treatment generally take, and is it painful?
Yeah, this is a question I get all the time.
Right.
Shockwave is not necessarily a pleasant experience. it does have a little bit of an ouch factor to it.
No pain, no gain.
Right, very true. No pain, no gain.
Right.
And in fact, we want a little bit of a pain because pain is another signaler the body uses to alert the brain that there's a problem with the tissue. And of course, the brain is what's going to react and coordinate that healing and repair in there. So yeah, a little bit of pain is helpful, but you only have to endure it for about 5 to 7 minutes.
And how many treatments would you suggest somebody undergo when it comes to shockwave therapy?
Well, this is the art of treating anybody and their condition, and all that is based on a number of factors. It could be the age of the person, it could be the duration of the complaint that they've had, the severity. So many factors go into there. We try to start out with a rule of thumb. If a problem is pretty new, I like to start in a 3 to 5 range. But if it's chronic, it could be 5 to 8, maybe 10 or 12 sessions to get some good results out of that.
Do we have any studies as well about potential side effects down the road?
There are studies out there about side effects, and this is where we like to alert people to the 2 different types of shockwave therapy. There is a radial shockwave therapy that is a pretty low pressure level. And that pressure level is really not capable of producing any damage in there. And then there's a focused shockwave therapy, which is a very high level pressure, and it has some potential to produce some hematoma and something inside of like a blood clot, or not clot, but pooling of blood within a tendon.
How about carpal tunnel syndrome? We hear that quite often. How can you help people with carpal tunnel?
Carpal tunnel is probably my least favorite condition to see.
Oh, do tell, do tell.
It's stubborn. I don't know. There must be multiple factors involved in this condition. I see some good results with adjusting the wrist. We restore the arch into that carpal tunnel, and I don't use shockwave on it. I have used acupuncture and had some good results with it. But the severity of that condition sometimes leaves a person with no other option than surgery.
Wow. Now, how about proper posture? How important is that?
Well, I'm glad you reminded me of that because I'm sure that I've been slouching a little bit.
And Mom's
myself.
probably watching, right? Come on, son.
Yeah.
Stomach in, chest out, head back.
Yeah.
But how important really is that to overall health?
It's a really great question. There are really 2 types of posture that are happening in our body. There's one that's subconscious that we don't think about, and that's really an alignment posture, and that has to do with the function of the spine and the health and the position of the vertebrae. And then of course there's our conscious posture that we can think about and correct ourselves. And I think it's very important because now we're seeing the arrival of a lot of conditions such as text neck, people sitting like this, texting too much,
neck, right.
or gamers, and they're getting a curve going the wrong direction in their neck, and it's producing a lot of downstream health problems and possibly even damage to the spinal cord and the cervical spine.
Would some of the nerves be pinched as well, perhaps?
They are interfered with, not necessarily pinched. They can be tractioned or stretched.
Okay.
And so can the blood vessels in the area and produce what we call an ischemia, which is a lack of blood supply. And of course, anytime we lose blood to an area, that's not a good thing for us.
What about pillows? Some people love the big fluffy pillows, filled, down-filled pillows. Other people say I need the chiropractic foam pillows with a curvature of my neck and my head. What do you suggest? What do you recommend? Or is everyone different?
Yeah, excellent question. Pillows, I don't know if there is really a firm answer to the pillow, hard or soft. But I caution people to use the curved pillows as more of a therapeutic treatment. Not necessarily something to sleep on, but something that you can use to help restore the curvature in the neck. And then when we're sleeping at night, we're probably going to shift it into an odd position anyways. So the pillow really comes down to a trial and error type of an issue.
How about when it comes to footwear and shoes, proper footwear? Should we use orthotics? Some orthopedic surgeons I've spoken with in the past, Dr. Jeff, they say no orthotics, bare feet is actually the best route to go. In and around the office, what are your thoughts?
Well, this is an excellent question, and that is a really important issue to look at with a person. I do see people who have some arches that are collapsing and they need the support. And then there are other people who don't have that problem, and of course they don't need the support. So the question really becomes, do we want to create a crutch in there, or do we want to try and rehabilitate the problem back to a natural position? Preventing the fall of the arch is important, and I think bare feet's a little bit better to prevent that than other type of footwear.
So if the arch has already fallen, it's too late?
Probably too late, and it's going to need some support.
Gotcha, okay. How about proper diet, vitamins, and supplements? How important are they for our overall back health?
Well, we can look at it certainly for our overall health, and certainly our spine too. Anytime we encounter an injury, we have to have the proper nutrition to heal and repair that. When you're going to go build a wall, you need to take the bricks and mortar with you, otherwise nothing's going to get done. And I didn't used to put too much emphasis on this in the past until I met a chiropractor who had been working through the 50s and 60s.
Wow.
And he said to me, he said, you have no idea how much of a struggle you're facing right now. When we used to adjust people, you could almost raise the dead because the only barrier was the physical barrier of the spine. They didn't have a nutritional deficit. Now we have depleted soils and chemically manufactured foods, and these are all not providing the nutrition that we need for proper healing and repair.
Dr. Jeff Hedrick, Lethbridge chiropractor specializing in shockwave therapy. Thanks a lot for joining me today on Bridge City News.
Thank you very much, Hal. I appreciate it.
On behalf of all of us here at BCN, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless and have a great night.